Hello and welcome to Sleepsmyth, your peaceful place to unwind, dream, and drift gently into sleep. Before we start our story tonight, let me help you settle in with a simple, calming breath like a gentle lullaby for your body and mind. So, find a cozy spot, maybe snuggle under your blanket, and softly close your eyes. Now, breathing quietly through your nose for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold that breath softly for 7 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now, slowly exhale through your mouth for 8 seconds, letting all the tension melt away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's do that again. Nice and easy. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One last time, just like a soft whisper. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Feel your body getting lighter, your mind quiet, as if you're being tucked gently into a calm, warm bed. Thank you for sharing this moment with Sleepsmyth. Now, relax completely and let the story carry you into a peaceful, restful sleep. Let's begin.
Love, it isn't always drawn in bold panels. It doesn't always follow the script or land on the page the way we imagine. Sometimes it's an alternate universe, a timeline that never made the issue, a story inked in shadow and forgotten, or remembered only by the echoes of what could have been. Tonight, we turn the page to the stories where love bends across realities, where first kisses are stolen or lost to fate, where desire clashes with duty, and hearts beat against the borders of destiny, where every what-if splinters into a new universe, and every choice redraws the panel of a life that might have been. Parker and Gwen Stacy, two souls bound by youth, courage, and a fleeting perfect summer. A love that death tried to erase, yet refuses to stay buried. Their laughter still lingers between city streets and swinging rooftops. In some timelines, they may have stayed together. In others, they exist only as memory. Wayne and Selina Kyle, partners in darkness, lovers in shadows, two hearts balancing on rooftops, on crime, on the edge of morality, a love that always teeters, never rests, yet never truly ends. In another issue, a single choice could have let them remain together. Here, their passion survives in stolen moments and fleeting glances. Dream and nada, an endless and immortal, A love so immense it defied life and death itself, and paid a price measured in eternity. In countless universes, their flame might have burned without end. Here they part in hell, yet the memory of their love stretches across all existence. 3 stories, 3 what-ifs, 3 loves that could have been everything, or nothing at all. Tonight, the comics speak, not of endings, but of moments suspended in time, where love lingers between panels, where longing writes itself in silence, in shadow, in heartbeat, and every what-if becomes a story worth holding close. This is Lovelore After Midnight. And tonight, ink between the timelines. Settle in. Let the night fall softly around you. Let the choices unmade, the love lost and found across universes, carry you gently through the worlds of longing that never was, and into the endless possibilities of what might still be. Blue Reverie, Lovelore of Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy. A narration inspired by Spider-Man Blue 2002. A remembrance drawn in longing, where a first love is relived in fragile detail, tender as breath, unfinished as dawn. The Tangle of Threads. It begins with the sound of a cassette tape sliding into place. A small click, a hiss of static, and then the hesitant voice of Peter Parker breaking the silence of a quiet attic. His words are not meant for the world outside, but for someone long gone. "Hi, Gwen," he begins, soft and uncertain, as though afraid the tape itself might reject the weight of his confession. The tape recorder is old, but its whirring reels hold something fragile, an act of remembering. Peter sits among boxes and dust, Spider-Man's mask folded away, his hand shaking slightly as he speaks into the past. He is no longer the teenager rushing from class to rooftops, nor the boy fumbling for excuses when late to dinner with Aunt May. He is older now, burdened by years, yet when he says her name, he is young again. Young, and standing at the threshold of a story that began on the sunlit campus of Empire State University. He remembers the energy of those days. Crowded hallways filled with laughter, students darting from class to class, New York itself pressing its rhythm into every step. Peter was still finding his footing, adjusting to college life, working shifts at the Daily Bugle, carrying the hidden exhaustion of a double life. To everyone else, he was just another student, quiet, studious, a little awkward. But beneath his shirt, the red and blue costume whispered of nights spent swinging above the city, battling villains, and shouldering responsibilities he could never explain. And then there was Gwen Stacy, golden-haired, graceful, the daughter of Captain George Stacy. She carried herself with a confidence that was never cruel, her intelligence shining not as a weapon but as an invitation. When she laughed, it was as though the noise around her folded away, and when her eyes found Peter across a crowded room, he felt, for the briefest of moments, like he wasn't invisible. On the tape, his voice wavers, a tender ache threaded through each word. "You were everything I didn't know how to ask for, Gwen. Smart, beautiful, kind. And you saw me even when I was trying so hard to disappear into the background." The memory unfurls, faces that would define those years stepping into focus. Harry Osborne, Peter's new roommate, wealthy and eager for connection, though carrying the shadows of a complicated home. Mary Jane Watson, dazzling and carefree, her presence as unpredictable as fireworks. Flash Thompson, once Peter's tormentor in high school, now stumbling towards something like friendship, though old habits lingered in every jab. Together they formed a circle around Peter, one that would draw tighter as the months went on. But Gwen was different. Gwen was steady, her attention not drawn by spectacle or performance. She noticed the small things, the way Peter would vanish suddenly, the tired look in his eyes, the way he carried burdens no one else seemed to see. And instead of turning away, she leaned closer, curious, kind, unwilling to let him drift into solitude. The attic grows quieter as Peter recalls her smile. "I didn't know how to let you in," he admits softly, "but you kept showing up, Gwen. You kept making the world feel less heavy." And so the first threads of their story are set. A boy too burdened to believe he deserved love, a girl whose light was bright enough to reach him anyway. In the tangle of strangers, classes, and crowded days, their connection sparked, not loudly, not suddenly, but like a quiet flame in the dark, growing warmer with every glance, every laugh, every moment that would come to define the memory he now holds so tightly. The tape whirs on, the chapter of memory resting not on closure, but on the fragile beginning of a love remembered in blue. Place among strangers. The cassette turns again, filling the silence with the low hum of magnetic tape. Peter takes a breath before speaking, as though steadying himself to open a door long sealed. "College was supposed to be a fresh start," he begins, his voice low and almost hesitant. "But even there, I felt like a stranger walking among strangers." Empire State University was alive with constant motion, students rushing across the quad, professors carrying armfuls of books, bulletin boards layered with flyers promising concerts, debates, and meetings that promised to change the world. And in the middle of it all was Peter Parker, backpack slung over his shoulder, camera tucked away, his head often bowed as if to shrink from notice. He attended lectures, filled his notebooks, nodded politely when spoken to, but more often than not, his mind was elsewhere, half in class, half in the city, waiting for a siren or a scream to pull him away. Still, for the first time since high school, he wasn't entirely alone. There was Harry Osborne, easy smile and restless energy, determined to make the most of every party, every chance to belong. Harry had money, connections, a charming grin, but Peter could see the flickers of something darker beneath, the weight of a father whose approval seemed impossible to earn. Then came Mary Jane Watson, a burst of color and life in every hallway she entered. Her laugh turned heads, her presence was a spark of chaos, teasing Peter with a wink one day, drifting away the next. Flash Thompson, too, had carried over into this new chapter, no longer the one-dimensional bully of high school, but still quick with a jab, still holding on to a rivalry that Peter never asked for. And there was Gwen Stacy, graceful, poised, yet approachable, her laughter softer than Mary Jane's, but somehow more lasting. Together, they formed a circle Peter never expected to step into. They invited him to join study groups, to sit with them in the cafeteria, to be part of conversations that bounced between light-hearted teasing and serious debates. And yet, even among them, Peter felt the tug of distance. He was present in body, but his heart, his time, his very energy were divided between two worlds. Every excuse he gave for vanishing, every unexplained bruise, every tired smile, built a quiet wall around him that few could see over. Except Gwen. Gwen Stacy, who didn't demand answers but noticed them all the same. She'd tilt her head when Peter excused himself, her eyes sharp but never unkind. She laughed at his awkward jokes, met him with patience when his attention drifted, and without ever pushing, she gave him the sense that she believed in him, believed in something beneath his silences that others might never care to see. On the tape, Peter lingers on this memory, his voice almost breaking into a laugh. You were the first person who didn't make me feel like I had to explain myself. You just accepted me, Gwen, even when I barely accepted myself. The attic grows heavier in its quiet as his words unfold, the tape faithfully catching every pause, every sigh. He speaks of afternoons spent on the library steps, Harry cracking jokes, Mary Jane waving off responsibilities with a shrug, Flash boasting about victories on the field. And there was Gwen, sometimes leaning in with a wry smile, sometimes just listening, but always there. She wasn't louder than the others, but somehow she was clearer, her presence cutting through the chatter until all Peter could hear was her voice. And so among strangers, Peter began to feel less like an outsider, not because he forced his way into the circle, but because one girl kept opening a space for him to belong. It was small at first, subtle, but it mattered. It mattered more than he could ever say aloud. The tape reels spin on, carrying Peter's confession through time. And in the soft grain of his voice is the echo of a young man realizing for the first time that love might be waiting for him, even if he could not yet bring himself to reach for it. Rain on the window. The tape clicks forward, and Peter's voice drifts through the quiet attic again. Softer this time, as if he is speaking into the hush of falling rain. It was small things, Gwen. The way you looked at me when you thought I wasn't paying attention. The way you laughed like you knew something I hadn't figured out yet. His words pause, carried along by memory, until they return with a weight of longing. It was in those moments I first realized how much I wanted to stay in your world. The memory begins with weather, the kind of late autumn storm New York knows well, when the sky turns heavy and gray, and the streets blur beneath sheets of rain. The windows of a university library trembled with the sound of it, drops streaking the glass as students hurried inside, shaking umbrellas, muttering about ruined notes and soaked jackets. Peter was already there, his books open, trying to split himself between the life of a student and the endless call of the city beyond those wet panes. And then Gwen entered, her umbrella snapping shut, her hair damp at the edges, her cheeks flushed from the cold. She spotted him instantly, alone at a corner table, shoulders hunched over physics problems, and without hesitation, she made her way to him. She didn't ask if the seat was free, she didn't wait for him to look up. She simply sat down, spreading out her books, as though she had always belonged there. Peter remembers the sound of her laugh, light as the rain tapping at the glass, when he fumbled to make room for her notebooks. She teased him gently about the way he scribbled equations in a rush, about the seriousness that seemed to hang over him even on a quiet afternoon. But beneath the teasing, there was warmth, an unspoken understanding that he wasn't just another face to her. Hours slipped by that way. Gwen working through her notes, Peter pretending not to be distracted by the way she twirled her pen, by the curve of her smile when she caught him staring. Outside, the storm softened to a drizzle, and the lamplight inside the library grew warmer, folding the world into a cocoon just large enough for the two of them. On the tape, Peter's voice falters with emotion. That was the first time I realized how easy it was to be with you. No masks, no excuses, no lies. Just you and me and the rain and the feeling that maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to keep running from everything. He recalls how Gwen walked with him afterward, their steps splashing lightly through puddles, umbrellas bumping as they tried to share the narrow sidewalk. She talked about her father with affection, about her hopes for the future, about the kind of difference she wanted to make in the world. Peter mostly listened, but what stayed with him wasn't the specifics of her words. It was the way she believed the world could still be kind, still be worth fighting for. The attic feels colder as Peter admits into the tape, "You made me want to fight for more than just the city. You made me want to fight for moments like that one, simple and real. The kind that slip through your fingers before you realize how much they mean." The rain on that library window is long gone, lost to decades, but in Peter's voice it falls again. Steady, quiet, unrelenting. A reminder of the day when love first brushed against his life, not with fireworks or grand gestures, but with the soft rhythm of rain, and the girl who chose to sit beside him as though it was the most natural thing in the world. Hearts in the Crossfire. The tape hums softly as Peter's voice returns. Lower, almost hesitant, as though he's carrying the memory of two lives pulling against each other. "I was falling for you, Gwen, but I was also Spider-Man. And love doesn't get to exist in a vacuum. Not when you spend your nights fighting men with pumpkin bombs and wings of steel." The memory tilts toward conflict, toward the truth of those college years, because just as Peter's bond with Gwen began to take root, the world around them grew more dangerous. New York was never quiet for long. The Green Goblin lurked in shadows, his menace stretching like an unspoken curse over the Osborn name. The vulture swept across the skies, a predator too cruel to leave the streets in peace. Craven the hunter stalked the city with a predator's patience, while the lizard, the ghost of one of Peter's own mentors, rose again and again from the man who could never be free of his curse. And in every battle, every skirmish, Peter was forced to vanish without warning, to leave behind friends, laughter, and Gwen, always Gwen. Peter's voice cracks slightly on the tape as he confesses, "I don't know how you put up with it, how you stayed, even when I kept running off without explanation. I kept telling myself I was protecting you by keeping the truth hidden, but I was really protecting myself from losing the only happiness I'd ever dared to want." He remembers the rooftop nights most vividly, the wind biting at his face, the city stretching out in 100,000 glowing windows, the weight of loneliness pressing harder than the mask itself. Down below, he could see the life he was leaving behind, his friends gathered together, Gwen's laugh carrying into the night. And he wondered again and again if he could ever truly belong to both worlds. Still, even as Spider-Man stole him away, Gwen reached for him in ways no one else did. She would smile at him in class after he arrived late, bruised but grinning. She would touch his arm lightly when he looked too tired, her concern wrapped in gentleness rather than interrogation. She believed in him, believed there was something worth trusting in the quiet, distracted boy who never seemed fully present. And Peter, in turn, found himself clinging to her faith like a lifeline. On the tape, his words tumble out like a confession too long buried. I wanted you to know, but I couldn't risk it. Every villain I fought, every enemy I made, it wasn't just my secret. It was a target painted on everyone I cared for. And the thought of losing you, Gwen, that thought terrified me more than any battle ever could. The attic around him is silent, the tape spinning on, catching the tremble in his voice as he breathes. He admits what he never could back then, that every fight he survived was not for glory, nor for headlines, but for the chance to see her again, to walk across campus and catch her smile, to share another quiet moment in the library, to imagine, just for a heartbeat, what it would be like to live only in that world with her, without the mask. But fate was not so merciful. Love, for Peter Parker, was never free from danger. It lived in the crossfire, between classrooms and rooftops, between laughter and screams, between the boy he wanted to be and the hero he was forced to become. And at the center of it, waiting with a patience he didn't deserve, was Gwen Stacy. Shades of memory. The tape reels spin, their low hiss filling the attic like the sound of distant rain. Peter's voice follows, soft and trembling, as if each word is being pulled from a place he has guarded for years. I think it was around Valentine's Day, Gwen, when I realized I wasn't just circling around you anymore. I was already lost, already yours, and every day without you felt like an ache I couldn't explain. The memories come with a hue blue, not the sharp blue of Spider-Man's costume, nor the cold blue of night skies, but something gentler. The color of her sweater in winter, the shade of her eyes when she leaned close, the tint of light reflecting from a window when she smiled. That was the blue Peter carried with him, the blue of something fragile and irreplaceable, the blue of a love just beginning to open. He recalls a walk through Washington Square, the air crisp with February chill, students clustered in scarves and coats, steam rising from food carts. Gwen's arm looped through his, her laughter chasing away the cold as she teased him for being distracted again, for nearly bumping into a passerby while lost in thought. But what she didn't know, what Peter couldn't say, was that his distraction was only her. The warmth of her hand on his sleeve, the curve of her smile when she looked up at him, the quiet miracle of her choosing to stay by his side when she had every reason not to. On the tape, his voice grows heavier, but gentler too. You made me feel like maybe it was okay to be just Peter, not the mask, not the hero, not the boy running himself ragged. Just me, and somehow that was enough for you. There were stolen moments in the library, late evenings studying side by side, her head tilting to rest against his shoulder when exhaustion blurred the lines of her notes. There were coffee shops filled with the buzz of conversation, where Gwen leaned across the table, her chin propped on her hand, listening to him with an attention that made the rest of the world disappear. And there were nights when Peter climbed down from rooftops, bruised and weary, only to find Gwen waiting with a smile that made the pain fade, if only for a heartbeat. The love between them was not loud or dramatic. It was steady, unspoken, threaded into every glance, every shared silence, every heartbeat that seemed to slow when she was near. It was love in its simplest form, love that did not demand but offered, love that made Peter believe, for the first time in years, that happiness was possible. But even in these golden memories, the shadow was always there. Peter confesses into the tape, "Every time I held your hand, I thought of how easily the world could take you from me, how my enemies wouldn't hesitate if they knew. And so I told myself lies. I told myself I could keep you safe by keeping you at arm's length. But I was already too far gone, Gwen, too much in love to ever let go." The attic seems smaller as the tape plays on, the weight of love and fear folded into Peter's words. He speaks of the color blue again, how it felt like the color of longing, the color of memory, the color of Gwen herself. A color that stayed with him long after the days had ended. And so their love bloomed, fragile but bright, threaded through moments too ordinary to seem important at the time. A library table, a rainy window, a winter walk through the park. But those moments, small as they seemed, became the anchor of Peter's heart, the color he would carry forever, the shade of blue that would haunt him always. The weight of shadows. The tape hums again, and Peter's words arrive slower, heavier, as though he is forcing himself to reopen wounds that never truly closed. "I should have known, Gwen. Love was never going to come without shadows for someone like me. And when they came for both of us." The memory sharpens into a night of chaos. New York streets ablaze with sirens and screams, the clash of Spider-Man against his oldest nemesis, the Green Goblin. Norman Osborn, with his cruel grin and razor laughter, riding the glider through the dark sky, raining destruction without hesitation. That night was not just another battle, it was a collision of fates. And Gwen's father, Captain George Stacy, was caught in the middle. Peter remembers every detail with aching clarity, the glider streaking past, the shattering of concrete, the cries of bystanders scattering for cover. And then Captain Stacy, brave to the last, shielding a child from falling debris, his body collapsing beneath the ruin even as Spider-Man fought desperately to stop it. Peter leapt, his web snapping out, his heart pounding with 1,000 pleas, but fate was already writing its line. He lifted the rubble, pulled Captain Stacy close, only to see the light already fading from the older man's eyes. On the tape, Peter's voice breaks, his breath catching as though he is back in that moment, holding Gwen's father in his arms. He knew, somehow he knew it was me beneath the mask, and with his last breath he told me to take care of you, Gwen. He asked me to keep you safe, and I swore I would, but even then I think I knew I couldn't. The weight of that night pressed itself into every part of Peter's life after. He stood at Gwen's side during the funeral, his arm around her trembling shoulders, both of them dressed in black while the city blurred around them. He wanted to tell her everything then, wanted to confess the truth, that her father's dying request was already carved into his heart. But he stayed silent, swallowing his guilt with every tear she shed, holding her tighter but offering no words that could close the wound. Still, Gwen's strength amazed him. She wept, yes, but she did not collapse. She spoke of her father with pride, remembering his honor, his kindness, his unwavering belief in justice. And through her grief, she leaned into Peter more than ever, trusting him to be her anchor, not knowing that he was the very storm that had taken her father away. The attic grows colder as Peter whispers into the tape, "I told myself I would carry that weight for you, Gwen, that I would keep the shadows from touching you again. But the truth is, they were always coming, and I was never strong enough to hold them back." The memory hangs like smoke of Captain Stacy's final words, of Gwen's trembling hand in his, of the vow Peter made in silence, a vow already doomed by the life he led. Their love, once wrapped in the gentle color of blue, now bore streaks of gray, heavy with loss, heavy with guilt, heavy with a shadow that would only grow darker in the days ahead. The tape reels spin on, capturing the ache of a man remembering not only how he loved, but how love was already being prepared for tragedy. For in every heartbeat with Gwen Stacy, there was always the echo of loss waiting in the wings. Bridge between worlds. The tape whirs softly, filling the attic with its low rhythm. Peter's voice does not come right away. When it finally does, it is raw, stripped bare, a man confessing the wound that never healed. "Gwen, it all comes back to the bridge, to the night I lost you." The memory crashes into focus, a cold night in New York, the George Washington Bridge towering above the dark waters, the wind carrying the echo of maniacal laughter. The Green Goblin had returned, his glider slicing through the sky, his pumpkin bombs blazing, his cruelty sharpened to its deadliest point. And in his claws, in his merciless grip, was Gwen Stacy. Unconscious, fragile, her golden hair whipping in the wind as though the night itself was trying to keep her alive. Peter chased him across the city, his heart pounding harder than his web shooters could fire, every muscle screaming as he swung closer, closer. He shouted her name, but the roar of the wind and the goblins' laughter drowned it out. The battle was not about masks or vendettas anymore. It was about her, about Gwen, about the girl who was his heart, dangling above the abyss. The fight was brutal, frantic. Pumpkin bombs exploding against stone, Spider-Man's webbing slicing through the air, the goblin taunting him with every strike. And then the unthinkable, the goblin released her. Gwen's body fell, graceful in its terror, tumbling down the side of the bridge, her white coat flaring like the wings of a broken angel. Peter remembers the moment with a clarity sharper than any wound. His web snapped out, his heart bursting with hope, his mind screaming that he was fast enough, strong enough, Spider-Man enough. The web caught her ankle just before she touched the water, and for a single breath, he believed he had saved her. But when he pulled her close, when he cradled her in his arms on that cold stone, her head fell limp, her eyes closed, her lips silent. There was no breath, no heartbeat, no spark of life left in her body. The whiplash of the fall had taken her before his arms could. His web had been fast, but not fast enough, and in trying to save her, he had broken her. On the tape, Peter's voice breaks completely, trembling with grief that decades have not dimmed. "I caught you, Gwen. I caught you, but you were already gone. And in that moment, everything inside me shattered." He remembers the silence of the world after, the goblins' laughter fading into the distance, the city unaware, the river below indifferent. He sat with her in his arms, his costume torn, his mask damp with tears, whispering apologies into the night, apologies that would never be heard. He had faced monsters, killers, endless battles, but nothing in all his life as Spider-Man ever hurt like holding Gwen Stacy's body on that bridge. The attic around him now feels like a tomb as the tape catches the smallest sound of his breath, the weight of his sorrow pressing against the walls. That was the night Spider-Man won the fight, and Peter Parker lost everything. And so the bridge remains in his memory, not as stone and steel, but as the line between two worlds, the one where Gwen lived, her laughter filling every corner of his days, and the one where she was gone, leaving only silence, only blue, a bridge he crossed once and could never cross back. Blue Valentine. The tape reels turn one last time. Slower now, their rhythm fragile, like the beating of a tired heart. Peter's voice comes through again, quieter than before, as though he's speaking not just into the recorder, but into the night itself, hoping the sound might slip past the walls of time. Gwen, if you can hear me, if somehow these words carry across the years, I just wanted to say, I miss you. I've always missed you. In the attic, dust floats in pale shafts of light, drifting like tiny ghosts of memory. The air is heavy with silence, yet it feels as though Gwen lingers in it. Her laughter tucked in the corners, her perfume faint in the folds of old clothes, her warmth pressed into the smallest creases of his memory. He sits with the recorder before him, the microphone like a confessional, a fragile thread between now and then. He recalls the first time he saw her, bright-eyed, full of spirit, smiling as though she already knew how much she would change his world. He recalls their walks through campus, their jokes shared over coffee, the warmth of her hand in his, the way she could make him forget the weight of Spider-Man even for just a heartbeat. These moments return not as images, but as living fragments, alive in him still, aching with a beauty too sharp to hold for long. The tape catches his sigh, a long breath of someone carrying more love than sorrow, though the sorrow is never far. I think about what we might have had, the life we never reached, and I wonder if, in some other timeline, some other strand of the web, we got it right. Maybe we grew old together, maybe we laughed at how scared I was to tell you how much I loved you, maybe you stayed, maybe I stayed too. There is a pause, longer this time, where it seems he cannot go on. But then his voice returns, steady, tender, the voice not of Spider-Man, not even of Peter Parker, but of a boy who loved a girl with all he had. I'm married now to Mary Jane, and she knows, Gwen, she knows that a part of me will always belong to you. She even told me once to say hello for her. That's the kind of person she is. The kind of woman you would have been friends with, maybe even sisters in another life. The reels keep turning, their final lap near. This isn't about regret, Gwen. It's about remembrance, about holding on to the light we had, even though it was brief. You were my first love, the one who taught me how it feels to give your heart completely. And though the years keep pulling me further away, I carry you with me always. His last words are almost a whisper, a prayer carried into the blue hush of memory. Happy Valentine's Day, Gwen. Wherever you are, I love you. The tape clicks, silence swells into the room. The recorder stops, but in the stillness, her presence feels near, as though she heard, as though she answered. The attic is blue with quiet, with longing, with a gentle ache of love unfinished yet never lost. and somewhere between breath and time, between memory and dream, Gwen Stacy lingers still. Masks Unveiled. Lovelore of Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle. A narration inspired by Batman, Hush 2002. A story of shadows entwined, where trust is dared, and love almost unmasks the night. Gotham at the Edge. Gotham never truly sleeps. It shifts, it breathes, it mutters in the low hum of neon lights and the distant wail of sirens. The city is a labyrinth of shadow and steel, a restless creature whose pulse beats strongest at night. And in that night, a dark figure moves with the precision of a predator and the weight of a soldier. Bruce Wayne, cloaked as the Batman, glides above streets soaked with menace, every movement sharpened by instinct, every silence filled with expectation. This is Gotham on the brink of something different. The air feels heavier, charged with unease. The usual chaos, gang wars, robberies, the endless schemes of old enemies, does not explain the tension that coils through the alleys tonight. It feels orchestrated, as though hands unseen are moving pieces across a board, arranging something larger, deeper. Bruce feels it in his bones, a rhythm offbeat, a whisper of a game whose rules he has yet to see. High above the city, the rain begins, a thin drizzle that glimmers against the cowl, painting Gotham in streaks of silver. Batman listens, always listening. The buzz of a radio, the crackle of a police dispatcher, the faint scuff of boots against a rooftop far away. To wear the mask is to live inside the noise of a city that devours itself each night. To sort signal from chaos, and to move before the world collapses under its own corruption. The night offers no answers easily. Already, Bruce has broken up an attempted kidnapping, chased smugglers into the Narrows, and silenced two gangs ready to tear each other apart. But the pattern troubles him. These crimes are not random, not separate. There is design here, a puppeteer tugging at Gotham's veins. And if Batman cannot find the hand behind it, Gotham will drown in the storm gathering above. Yet even as he swings across the skyline, as he drops into darkened alleys and vanishes into steam, there is a part of him, the man beneath the mask, that stirs restlessly. Bruce Wayne lives in the quietest corner of Batman, a shadow behind the shadow, and he wonders how long a man can live without something more than the fight. But Gotham allows little time for reflection. A gunshot cracks through the night, bouncing off brick and glass, carrying with it the urgency of violence. Batman moves before the echo fades, cape cutting the air, grapnel line arcing him across the void. He lands silently, crouched in the glow of a half-dead street lamp, and surveys the scene, a wealthy heir dragged from his car, bound by thugs with too much confidence, too much precision. This is no common robbery. Batman descends, and the fight is swift, brutal. Fists bone, the sharp strike of justice delivered in darkness. But in the blur of combat, Bruce feels it again, that unseen hand guiding, arranging. This is a message, not a crime, a sign that the night itself has shifted. When the last thug falls, groaning against the pavement, Batman looks up, and for a fleeting instant, he swears he sees another figure watching from the rooftops above, a silhouette sleek, feline, familiar, the tail end of a whip catching the light before vanishing into the dark. Selina Kyle, Catwoman. Bruce does not chase, not yet. The city holds its breath, the rain falls harder, and the first moves of a much greater game unfold beneath the gaze of the bat. When the thief returns. The night is never still in Gotham. It shifts like a restless tide, pulling new dangers into its current with every passing hour. Batman senses it in his bones, a predator's intuition sharpened through years of scars, a rhythm that beats faster when the city is about to change. And tonight it does. The crime he stopped had been precise, too precise. Thugs who were trained to move in silence, who handled themselves with discipline far above the usual desperate chaos of Gotham's underworld. Someone had given them orders, someone with reach and intent. But before Bruce can follow the threads, the shadows reveal another piece of the puzzle, graceful, lithe, and dangerous as the night itself. She moves across the rooftops like a whisper of silk, the curve of her figure slicing through the moonlight, the whip in her hand trailing behind like a shadow alive. Selina Kyle, Catwoman, thief, rival, ally, temptation. Their history is tangled in rooftops and narrow escapes, in stolen kisses and stolen jewels. She is a part of Gotham's night as much as he is, and every time she reappears, the world shifts a little more beneath his feet. Batman follows her silently, the city rushing below them, the lights of Gotham blurring into a smear of motion as the chase unfolds above. He knows her rhythm, the way she runs, the way she leaps across impossible distances as if the air itself bends to her will. And yet, every time there is something new, a daring glance over her shoulder, a flash of a smile that is both challenge and invitation. Tonight, she is not here for jewels, not for banks, not for treasures tucked into safes. She is entangled in something larger, something that connects to the unseen hand Bruce has begun to sense. When she finally pauses, crouched on the edge of a high rise overlooking the river, her voice cuts through the distance like velvet edged in steel. "You're late, handsome," she purrs, not looking back, knowing he's already there. Batman steps from the shadows, cape folding around him like wings. "What are you doing here, Selina?" His voice is low, even, but underneath it runs a thread of tension, because every encounter with her is a game where the stakes are always higher than he wants to admit. She turns, her goggles catching the glow of the city lights, her lips curved in that infuriating smile. "Same thing as you, following the money, following the fear. You're not the only one who's noticed things are changing." For a moment, the silence stretches between them, charged with more than words. He doesn't trust her motives, not fully. Yet he knows she has seen what he has seen, the pattern beneath the crimes, the coordination, the plan threading through Gotham's chaos. "You're in over your head," he warns, his eyes narrowing beneath the cowl. "And you're still pretending you don't need me," she answers, stepping closer, her voice soft, dangerous, playful all at once. "It's always like this, the push and pull, the collision of trust and doubt." She is not just a thief to him anymore, not just another name in his gallery of foes. She is the one who keeps returning, the one who slips past his defenses, who makes him wonder what might exist if he let the mask fall away. But tonight, there is no time for wondering. The city trembles with something vast, and their paths, as always, are tangled in it. For the first time in months, they are not hunter and prey. They are something else, two predators circling the same mystery, their hearts beating just a little faster because of each other. And somewhere above, hidden in the dark, another presence watches, a shadow taking notes, weaving their steps into a larger design. The night is not theirs alone, though it feels, in this brief moment, as if the entire city belongs only to Batman and Catwoman. Rivals in the dark. The rain thickens as Gotham breathes beneath them. Neon smears across wet asphalt, headlights cut like blades through the mist, and high above it all, two figures move, parallel, circling, unwilling to break the magnetic pull between them. Batman and Catwoman. Rivals, yes, but something else tonight. Something less defined and far more dangerous. They land almost in unison, the chase giving way to a standoff on a skeletal rooftop frame, steel girders slick with rain. The city moans in the distance, sirens chasing ghosts across alleys, but here the silence between them presses heavier than the storm. "You think you can keep me out of this," Selina says, tilting her head, her goggles flashing in the lightning. "But I've already seen more than you think." Batman's jaw tightens. He has spent years keeping her at the edge of his world, close enough to touch, far enough never to hold. Trust is a line he rarely crosses, and with Selina, it feels more like stepping off a ledge into nothingness. "This isn't a game," he growls, but the weight in his voice carries more than warning. It carries fear, the kind that has nothing to do with bullets or blades. She smiles, sharp, amused, but there's something else in her gaze, softer beneath the mask. "You're right. It's not a game, not tonight." Then the rooftop explodes into chaos. A squad of mercenaries emerges from the shadows below, armed with military precision, their movements too exact to be street scum. The trap springs around them, and suddenly Bruce and Selina are back to back, fighting not each other, but the wave of enemies who mean to silence them both. The battle is brutal, feral. Batman's strikes are controlled, efficient, a storm of muscle and technique honed through years of war. Selina is fluid, deadly, her whip singing through the air, claws catching flesh, every movement a dance that borders on grace even as it draws blood. And for a moment, they are in rhythm, partners, not rivals. Every strike of his is answered by hers, every dodge flows into her lunge, every fall of an enemy punctuated by their shared breath. When the last mercenary collapses into the rain-slick steel, the silence returns. They stand there, breathing hard, the city howling below, and for a flicker of a heartbeat, they are not Batman and Catwoman, they are Bruce and Selina, two souls cut from the same night. She steps closer, her hand brushing his shoulder almost without thought. "See? We work well together," she says, her voice low, coaxing, not a taunt but something nearer to truth. He should turn away, he should remind her who she is, what she is. But his body doesn't move, his guard doesn't rise. He only watches her, rain dripping from the edge of his cowl, the city fading into blur around them. Still, the doubts crawl back, cold and sharp. Who sent these men? Why now? How much does she already know? Gotham's conspiracy tightens its noose, and even in this fragile pause, Bruce feels the game pulling them deeper into a design he cannot yet see. "Don't mistake convenience for trust," he says finally, his voice steady but softer than he intended. Selina's smile curves again, not wounded, not offended, only knowing. "Trust me or don't, but you can't stop needing me." The words linger between them, heavier than the storm. Rivals, yes, but no longer able to walk away. Perilous bond. The storm does not pass, it lingers, heavy and unrelenting, pressing Gotham into deeper shadow. In the wake of the rooftop battle, Batman and Catwoman move through the city not as predator and prey, but as uneasy allies, two blades drawn against a single unseen hand. Bruce has fought beside many, partners, protégés, soldiers of his cause, but Selina is different. Her movements are her own, untamed, unchained by his rules. She listens when she chooses, defies when it pleases her, and yet, somehow, the rhythm between them is undeniable. In the chaos of Gotham's night, they fit together like mismatched pieces that nonetheless complete a pattern. Tonight, that pattern draws them deeper into the labyrinth of conspiracy. A kidnapping, a ransom demand too intricate for the usual gangs, threads back to the same unseen puppeteer. Batman would normally pursue this alone, cloaked in silence, but Selina has already inserted herself, tracking leads with her own methods, her own network, her own feral cunning. When she drops beside him on a gargoyle ledge, her breath warm in the rain, her smile sharp against the storm, Bruce feels the choice rise like a tide inside him. To push her away again, to remind her she is a thief, an outlaw, or to admit what the night is already teaching him, that he cannot do this without her. "You don't like it, do you?" she teases, voice soft but laced with fire. "That you need me?" He doesn't answer, but silence is an answer of its own. Together they descend into Gotham's underworld, through sewers slick with rot, through warehouses humming with the machinery of crime. She moves with feline grace, her whip snapping through the dark, her claws striking sparks from steel. He follows with grim precision, his fists breaking bones, his cape swallowing gunfire in black thunder. And in every moment, they are not two, but one rhythm, one storm. Somewhere in the fight, Bruce notices the shift in himself. He is not watching her for betrayal, not waiting for the moment she turns the night against him. He is relying on her, depending on her in the way he depends on no one outside the family he built. And it frightens him, this trust that grows too fast, too fierce. After the last enemy falls, Selina leans against a crate, her chest rising with quick breath, her eyes gleaming through wet strands of hair. She looks at him not as Batman, not as a mask, but as a man standing too close, carrying too much weight. "You don't have to do it all alone," she says, quieter now, almost tender. "Let me in, Bruce." The sound of his name on her lips is a knife and a bomb all at once. Few dare to say it, fewer still with that kind of softness. For a moment, he considers it, lowering the wall, letting her step through the fortress he has built around himself. But the storm presses closer, the conspiracy thickens, and trust for Batman has always been a weapon sharpened against him. Still, as they move deeper into the city, side by side, he does not push her away. For the first time, he chooses the dangerous path, the path where Catwoman is not just rival or temptation, but partner. It is not love yet, not openly, not spoken, but it is something just as perilous. A dangerous alliance, sealed not in words, but in the way their shadows fall together across Gotham's broken streets. The Rooftop Pact. The city exhales in smoke and neon, the storm easing but never ending. Gotham's skyline cuts sharp against the bruised sky, towers rising like jagged teeth, and at its edge Batman and Catwoman stand alone. A rooftop, high above the restless streets, becomes their world, a stage for words too dangerous to speak elsewhere. They have fought together now, more than once. Their alliance is no accident, no whim. It is necessity, sharpened by something deeper neither dares to name. Bruce watches her through the shadows of his cowl, the way the rain clings to her mask, the way her eyes glimmer with mischief and something softer, hidden but present. She is a thief, an outlaw, a contradiction to everything he has built himself upon. And yet tonight, she feels less like temptation and more like possibility. Selina leans close to the edge, her whip coiled loosely at her side, the city glittering beneath her like 1,000 promises. "You know," she says, her voice lilting, teasing but not mocking, "we could make this permanent. Gotham doesn't have to be your burden alone, not when I'm here." Her words land heavier than she intends, for Bruce has always carried Gotham as penance, as duty, as vow. To imagine sharing that weight, even for a moment, is to imagine freedom. And freedom is a dream he does not trust himself to hold. Yet still he answers, not with rejection, not with the sharp edge of distance, but with a pause, a silence that stretches long enough for the storm to fill it with its low, endless song. He steps closer, not to close the distance, but to narrow it. "If you want to stand with me," he says finally, his voice low, steady, but not unkind, "then you have to play by my rules. This city, it doesn't forgive mistakes." Selina's smile curves, sly but genuine. "Your rules, huh? I'll try, but no promises." It is the closest he will come to surrender, and the closest she will come to obedience. Yet between those imperfect vows, something new is born. A pact not written in ink or blood, but in trust, fragile and reckless, fragile as glass but no less real. She moves closer still, her hand brushing his chest, her breath warm against the cold armor of his suit. "You'll see, Bruce," she whispers, softer now, no longer teasing, "I can be what you need." For once, he does not push her away. He lets the touch linger, lets the closeness bloom like fire caught in rain. and in the silence of the rooftop, with Gotham sprawling endlessly below, it feels almost possible, this idea of them together against the night. But shadows are patient, and conspiracies wait in silence. And though neither speaks it aloud, they both know this fragile pact may not hold against what is coming. Still, for tonight, under the bruised sky and the endless hum of Gotham's heart, Batman and Catwoman are no longer rivals. They are allies, bound not by convenience, but by something deeper, unspoken, unmasked, if only for a fleeting breath. A rooftop pact, sealed not in trust fully earned, but in the daring to imagine that it could be. The kiss in the rain. The storm has not ceased. It lingers like a heartbeat above Gotham, sheets of rain tracing silver paths across the rooftops. The city below thrums with its usual chaos, but up here, high above it all, there is only the sound of water, the whisper of wind, and two shadows standing closer than they should. Batman is not a man given to indulgence. He lives by control, by restraint, by walls built of discipline and grief. Yet tonight, those walls tremble beneath the weight of her presence. Selina's eyes gleam through wet lashes, her lips curved in that dangerous, knowing smile, the one that promises mischief and means something else entirely when she turns it toward him. Her suit glistens with rain, her whip coils idly at her side, but she is still as she looks at him, waiting, daring him to take the step she knows he longs for but fears. "Always the brooding night," she murmurs, voice soft, intimate, meant for him alone. "When are you going to admit what this is? What we are?" Bruce's chest tightens, the storm echoing his silence. He has told himself for years that she cannot be trusted, that love is weakness, that attachments are vulnerabilities sharpened into weapons by enemies who would tear Gotham apart to break him. And yet, when she speaks, when she draws near, those fears scatter like ash against the rain. Her hand lifts, slow, deliberate, fingertips brushing the edge of his cowl, tracing the line of his jaw. It is not a thief's touch, not a challenge, but something gentler, achingly human. And Bruce, for once, does not pull away. The city blurs behind them as the storm swells, thunder rolling like a drum. Then, in a moment that feels both reckless and inevitable, he lowers his guard, lowers the distance, and their lips meet, harsh at first, then softening, surrendering, as if the storm itself bends to hold them together. The kiss is not just passion, though it is that. It is defiance, it is confession, it is a lifetime of rivalry and longing condensed into a single breath. For once, Batman is not alone, and Bruce Wayne is not haunted by ghosts. He is simply a man in the rain, kissing the woman who has haunted his every midnight. Selina presses closer, her hand curling against his chest, her body fitting into the armor and shadows as if she belongs there. And for one fragile heartbeat, it feels as though she does. When they part, breathless and rain-soaked, the silence that follows is heavier than words. Gotham still hums below, the conspiracy still coils in the dark, and Bruce knows this moment cannot last. But it has happened, and in happening, it has changed everything. "You're impossible," Selina says with a half-smile, half-sigh, her eyes searching his, daring him to retreat, daring him not to. Bruce doesn't retreat. His voice is low, steady, almost unrecognizable to his own ears. "Maybe, but so are you. The storm surges again, lightning tearing the sky, thunder echoing across the city. And though the night is far from over, though danger waits on every corner, though trust remains a fragile, fleeting thing, one truth lingers above all else. They have kissed, and in that kiss, the rules of their world have changed forever. A kiss in the rain, a vow unspoken, fragile as breath, yet undeniable as the night itself. Fracture. The rain has softened into mist, but the weight of the storm still lingers in Bruce's chest. The kiss remains, burning, undeniable, etched into the silence between them, a line he cannot uncross. And yet, the doubts gather like shadows at the edges of his mind. For Batman, love has always been dangerous. His crusade demands sacrifice, demands isolation, demands that Bruce Wayne and his heart remain locked behind iron walls. But Selina has never respected walls. She scales them, breaks them, dances across their ledges as if they were meant only for her amusement. And now she is inside, closer than anyone outside his family has ever been. They move together across Gotham, allies against the conspiracy unraveling around them. Yet every step beside her sharpens his unease. He finds himself watching not just her movements in combat, but the curve of her smile, the softness in her voice when she teases him, the rare flickers of sincerity she lets slip when she thinks he won't notice. And with each moment, he wonders, can she be trusted, truly trusted? Or is he letting himself fall into a trap carefully laid by unseen hands? The city offers no answers, only more danger. Another lead, another ambush, another fight in the labyrinth of alleys and warehouses. Together they face it, their rhythm unbroken, but when the final blow is struck, Bruce feels the tension grow heavier, not lighter. On a rooftop afterward, drenched in sweat and rain, Selina leans closer, her eyes gleaming with that same mischievous fire, but beneath it, something more vulnerable. "What are you thinking, Bruce?" she asks, her tone half playful, half searching. He hesitates, and hesitation is rare for him, rarer still in her presence. Finally, in a voice stripped of armor, he answers, "I don't know if I can trust you, but I want to." The words hang between them, raw, dangerous. To admit want is harder than to admit fear, harder even than to admit love. Selina's smile softens, her hand brushing the edge of his cowl again, as if she could peel away the doubts with her touch. "Then stop overthinking," she whispers. "Just be here, with me, for once." But Bruce cannot, not fully. For even as his heart strains toward her, his mind replays every betrayal, every deception Gotham has ever offered. And he knows she has walked both sides of the line, hero, thief, ally, adversary. Which version of her is standing beside him tonight? Which one will remain when the storm passes? Still, he does not pull away. For all his doubts, all his fears, he remains there with her, rain sliding down the angles of his cowl, his silence more revealing than any vow. Secrets remain between them, thick as the night itself. Beneath the mask, Bruce wrestles with a truth he cannot bury. He has already let her too close. And Selina, for all her teasing, for all her bravado, feels it too. that they are teetering on the edge of something neither can fully control, something that could destroy them both. The city groans below, restless, unknowing, as two figures linger on its rooftops, bound not by certainty, but by the fragile, perilous pull of desire tangled with doubt. Secrets beneath the mask, secrets that might save them or shatter them when the truth finally comes to light. Alone in the night, the city never sleeps. Gotham's night bleeds into morning, its alleys still slick with rain, its towers clawing at the bruised sky. And in the midst of it, the conspiracy that has shadowed Batman's every step begins to unravel, threads pulled tight until the pattern reveals itself. A face behind the chaos, a hand that has manipulated friend and foe alike. But even as Bruce confronts the truth, another battle rages within him, one not fought in fists or shadows, but in trust, in love, in the fragile tether that binds him to Selina Kyle. They have fought side by side, bled together, kissed beneath the storm. And yet, the doubts gnaw at him, sharper now than ever. Every whisper of betrayal, every mask torn away in Gotham's long history of deception, haunts his mind. Could Selina, too, be a piece in someone else's game? Could his heart, once again, be turned into a weapon against him? On the rooftop where it began, the storm finally passes, leaving the air heavy, thick with silence. Selina stands close, her eyes searching his, her hand brushing his arm as if to ground him. "We did it," she says softly. "Whoever thought they could break you, they failed. We beat them. Together." Her words should soothe him. Instead, they twist the knife of his uncertainty. Bruce looks at her, really looks, and for a moment he lets himself imagine it, the life that might have been. A Gotham where Batman and Catwoman fight not as rivals but as partners. A Bruce Wayne who allows himself to love without fear, without armor, without masks. But the moment is fleeting. The weight of his vow, of his city, of his endless war, crashes back over him. And with it, the fear that Selina, however much he longs for her, is still a risk he cannot afford. "You don't trust me," she says at last, the softness slipping from her voice, replaced by something sharper, wounded. "After everything, after what we've been through, you still don't trust me." The silence is answer enough. Her eyes harden, but not with anger, with hurt, with disappointment, with a shattering of something fragile they had both dared to believe in. She pulls back, the distance between them suddenly wider than any rooftop gap. "I thought you were different," she whispers. "I thought we were different." Bruce says nothing. He wants to reach for her, to hold her, to pull her back into the kiss, the storm, the fragile dream they built together. But the words die in his throat, choked by the walls he cannot break, the vow he cannot betray. So she leaves, graceful even in heartbreak, her silhouette vanishing into the thinning mist, her absence heavier than any enemy's blow. Batman remains, alone against the skyline, his cape heavy with rain, his heart heavier still. He tells himself it is for the best, that trust is too dangerous, that love is too fragile for a man like him. And yet, as the city hums below, he feels the ache of what might have been. A breaking point, not of fists, but of hearts. A love almost realized, almost unmasked, almost free, and yet, as ever in Gotham, left unfinished, a shadow of what could never last. Eternal Flame, Lovelore of Dream and Nada. A narration inspired by The Sandman, The Doll's House, 1989. A love that burned across lifetimes, where passion defied gods, and the price of refusal was eternity. The Mortal Queen. In the beginning, there was a kingdom beneath the endless sun, a realm of warm winds and tall stone towers, where the earth shimmered with heat and the people thrived in harmony with sky and sea. At the heart of this kingdom was its ruler, a woman of unmatched grace and strength, Queen Nada. She was not only sovereign, but also the very spirit of her land, as radiant as the deserts and as enduring as the rivers that cut through them. Her people adored her, for she carried both wisdom and mercy, and yet there was a stillness within her heart, a quiet searching that no crown could fill. Nada's beauty was spoken of as legend, but it was her presence that lingered most in memory. She walked among her people with gentleness, sat in judgment with clarity, and led with the certainty of one who believed her purpose was to nurture and protect. To many, she seemed complete, yet she herself felt a yearning she could not name, a longing that stirred at night when the stars whispered of mysteries beyond her reach. She would stand on the palace balcony and look upward, wondering if the heavens above knew her name, if there was something beyond the horizon that her mortal eyes could not see. It was on one such night, as moonlight poured silver across the sands, that Nada first felt the weight of something greater. A presence brushed against her soul, soft as a shadow, heavy as eternity. She looked upward, and for a moment, time seemed to still. The stars dimmed, the air cooled, and the veil between mortal and immortal trembled. She did not yet know that her gaze had touched the dreaming, and that the Dream Lord himself had seen her. Dream of the endless, ruler of stories, of visions, of the secret life that stirs when eyes close, had watched mankind for eons. Yet when his gaze fell upon Nada, the mortal queen with fire in her eyes, something within him shifted. In her, he did not see only a mortal spark soon to fade, but a brilliance that challenged even his endless nature. He descended into her world, not with thunder or command, but with quiet inevitability, as though their meeting had been written in sand long before her birth. And so, as the queen stood beneath the stars, she felt a warmth take root within her chest. She did not yet know his name, nor his vast dominion, but she felt him, an endless figure clothed in shadow and dream. Their story had not yet begun, but already it was written into the fabric of eternity. For the mortal queen had caught the eye of Dream himself, and the price of such a union would echo across centuries. Eyes in the sky. The days that followed carried the same rhythm of sunlight and duty for Queen Nada, yet within her heart there lingered an unfamiliar restlessness. She presided over her people with her steady voice, welcomed traders at the palace gates, and walked the bustling streets where markets sang with color and sound. But each moment felt touched by a presence she could not name, like the memory of a dream that refuses to fade with morning light. Her eyes would rise again and again to the sky, to the vast blue dome above, searching. And though her people thought she sought omens or blessings, she knew she was searching for him. When night fell, the air grew heavy with heat and silence, and the queen would step onto her balcony, gazing into the jeweled darkness. The stars glimmered like scattered embers, and the moon rode high, pale and watchful. It was there in those hushed hours that she felt it most keenly, that pull, that steady pressure, like an unseen gaze pressing gently upon her soul. She did not know that beyond those stars lay the dreaming, the kingdom of Morpheus, and that its master was watching still. Dream, though eternal and unyielding, found himself drawn to her with a curiosity he could not dismiss. The endless did not crave as mortals did. His realm was boundless, his purpose absolute. Yet Nada's spirit gleamed like a flame against the void, a mortal heart that pulsed with courage and warmth. She was beauty not just of form but of being, and that beauty reached beyond the limits of her world, piercing even the veil of dreams. One night, when the moon shone brightest, he stepped into her world. Not with a storm, not with thunder, but with quiet grace, as though he were only another shadow stretching across her chamber floor. Nada looked, and before her stood a figure tall and dark, his skin pale as starlight, his eyes twin abysses filled with countless stories. Cloaked in the weight of eternity, he was both terrifying and magnificent. And yet, when he spoke, his voice was softer than the desert winds that passed through her city. Nada, he said, and the sound was both a name and a song. She trembled, for she did not know how this stranger had entered her chamber, nor how he knew her name. Yet deep within, she felt recognition, as though her soul had always known him, as though he had been waiting at the edge of her dreams since her birth. Her people slept beyond the palace walls, unaware that their queen stood before a god. And Nada, though mortal, did not kneel. She lifted her chin and met his gaze, fire burning in her eyes. "Who are you?" she asked, though part of her already knew the answer. And Dream, with all the weight of eternity pressing gently into his words, replied, "I am he who rules the realm of sleep, the shaper of visions, the lord of dreams. And I have seen you, queen of the living. I have seen you, and I cannot look away." The night hushed, the stars seemed to draw closer, and between them hung a silence that was not absence but possibility. It was the silence before the first spark of fire, before the first breath of love. A forbidden union. From that night forward, the queen and the endless met beneath the watch of moon and stars. Each encounter began with hesitation, with Nada's heart racing as shadow and eternity stepped into her chamber, and ended with silence too deep for words. She, a mortal woman bound to earth and crown. He, an endless being who walked through dreams as effortlessly as breath. Their worlds could not touch, and yet they did. The gulf between them was vast, but desire has never obeyed boundaries, and in the secret stillness of night, they crossed that gulf again and again. Dream spoke to her of realms she could scarcely imagine, of the dreaming where every vision, every fear, every wish of humankind took shape, of his siblings, the endless, who ruled over concepts greater than gods. She listened with wide eyes, and though his words were heavy, she was not afraid. For beneath his pale face and endless eyes, she saw loneliness, a solitude so ancient and deep it almost broke her heart. And in her, Dream found not awe nor worship, but a warmth he had never known, an equal gaze that did not falter even before eternity. Soon, their meetings were no longer filled with questions, but with closeness. He would take her hand, and though his touch was cool as starlight, she felt the weight of forever press into her skin. They would walk the palace terraces while her people slept, shadows draping around them like cloaks. He would whisper of dreams he had shaped, of lives touched for a breath in the quiet hours. And she would tell him of her kingdom, of the burdens of rule, of laughter shared in markets and tears shed at funerals. They gave each other what neither world could offer, his infinity tempered by her humanity, her mortality lifted by his timeless gaze. But with closeness came whispers, and with whispers came doubt. Nada began to see signs, faint but undeniable. The crops shivered beneath sudden storms, the rivers trembled with unnatural floods, and the air itself seemed to watch her. She had crossed into something forbidden, and the world seemed to know. Love between mortal and endless was not a thread woven easily, for it pulled at the fabric of existence itself. Yet in his arms, she felt not danger, but home. On the highest night of summer, when firelight danced from the city below, Nada laid her head against his chest, listening for a heartbeat that did not come. In his silence she felt both wonder and sorrow. "We were not meant for this," she whispered, and her voice cracked like breaking pottery. But Dream, his pride wrapped around him like his cloak, only held her tighter. "We are meant," he said, his voice low as midnight, "for I will it so. And I am Dream, what I dream shall be." She closed her eyes then, torn between the warmth of his embrace and the weight of the heavens pressing down upon her soul. Their love was real, yet it was a love the world itself seemed to resist. A union forbidden not by decree or law, but by the order of the cosmos. Still in that moment, as her breath mingled with his silence, Nada chose to stay. For love, when it burns, often blinds, and the flame they shared was only growing brighter, even as shadows gathered at its edges. The fire of refusal. The city slept, but Nada did not. She stood at the edge of her palace balcony, the wind hot against her skin, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the desert met the sky. In her chest burned the memory of Dream's embrace, and yet alongside it, another fire, fear. For the signs had grown louder. Crops withered under sudden frost, lightning split the skies without clouds, and children woke screaming from nightmares too heavy for their years. She knew deep within that their love was not only forbidden, it was dangerous. Not for her alone, but for her people, for the very balance of her world. That night, when Dream appeared again, she turned to him with a face carved from sorrow. He reached for her, shadows stretching like a cloak around them, but she drew back, trembling. "We cannot," she whispered, her voice breaking, her heart caught between longing and dread. "I am mortal, and you are endless. Our love defies the order of the universe. It will bring ruin." Dream's expression hardened, his eyes as dark as the abyss between stars. "Do not speak of fate to me," he said, his voice low and cold, like sand shifting in a tomb. "I am Dream, and I shape the fate of mortals. I love you, Nada, and I will not let you deny what is ours." Her throat tightened, her heart shattering even as she spoke. "Then you do not love me. For love would spare me, spare my people. Love would not consume the world simply to feed its own flame." Tears traced her cheeks, and yet she held his gaze, unflinching. For she was queen, and queens do not bend, even before gods. Dream's silence was heavy, dangerous. His pride was ancient, older than suns, and it could not comprehend rejection. He had chosen her, above all mortals, above all moments in time, and she dared say no. "I will not," Nada whispered, her voice steady now, the flame of her resolve rising above the ache in her chest. "I cannot. To love you is to betray the living, and I will not condemn my people for the sake of my desire." She turned from him then, her body trembling, her spirit breaking. For every step away from him was agony, every breath a wound. Yet she walked, for she believed it was the only way to protect all she had sworn to protect. Dream called after her, his voice like thunder pressed into silence. "Nada." It was not a plea but a command, the weight of eternity behind it. But she did not turn. She walked into the dark of her palace, her footsteps echoing like a funeral dirge. And so it was done. A mortal queen refused the love of an endless. Fire and sorrow clashed within her heart, but her choice was made. She had chosen her people, her duty, the fragile threads of life that pulsed in the world around her. What she did not know was that refusal was not the end. For to reject Dream of the endless was to ignite a wrath that burned beyond mortal reckoning. And the fire of her refusal would soon be met with a darker fire still. The wrath of the endless. When the endless are crossed, the world trembles. Dream, whose pride was carved from eons, whose will shaped visions and nightmares alike, had been refused by a mortal. By Nada, the queen whose fire had captivated him. Her rejection seared through him like a blade, a wound deeper than even he could name. He had offered eternity, and she had chosen the fleeting breath of her people over his love. Pride twisted into fury, and fury into judgment. He appeared before her again, cloaked in shadow and sorrow, his voice like a storm pressed tight into words. "You will not deny me," he said, eyes glinting with the cold weight of infinity. "If you will not walk beside me in love, you will kneel beneath me in punishment." Nada stood tall, her body trembling but her spirit unbroken. "I do not kneel," she said, her voice steady as stone, though tears burned at the corners of her eyes. "Not before man, not before God, and not before you. Do what you will, Dream, but know this, I chose out of love. Love for my people, for my world, for the fragile thread that binds us to life. If you cannot see that, then your love was never love at all. For a moment, silence hung like a blade between them. Even the winds seemed to wait. And then Dream's hand rose, and his will descended upon her. The ground shook, the air thickened, and before her eyes the earth split like an open wound. Fire roared upward, the sky darkened, and Nada felt her body ripped from its place in the mortal world. She cried out, not for herself, but for her people, for the city that trembled beneath the weight of an endless wrath. And then she fell, downward, endlessly downward, into darkness that screamed with torment. Hell itself received her, chains coiling like serpents around her wrists and ankles, fire licking her skin though it did not burn away her flesh. Around her rose the wails of countless souls, each damned, each broken, each echoing through eternity. And among them Nada, a queen undone not by conquest, not by treachery, but by love refused. In his realm, Dream stood unmoving, his face still and pale, yet within him pride warred with sorrow. He told himself it was justice, that her rejection had demanded consequence. But deep beneath that cold veneer stirred another truth, that he had condemned the woman he loved to endless torment, not out of law, but out of wounded pride. The dreaming itself seemed to shift uneasily. Even the realm of dreams, obedient to its master, knew that something had broken, that in choosing vengeance over mercy, Dream had scarred not only Nada, but himself. And so it was written into the fabric of eternity. Nada, the mortal queen who defied an endless, was cast into hell for 10,000 years. Her fire extinguished in life, yet burning still in memory, her love twisted into punishment. The wrath of Dream was vast, but in time, even wrath cannot silence guilt. 10,000 years. Time is a river for mortals, swift and relentless, carrying them from birth to death in a span too brief to measure against the stars. But for Nada, time became a cage. She fell into hell, and years became centuries, centuries became millennia, and still the torment stretched on. 10,000 years of fire and silence, of endless cries echoing in caverns of despair. The mortal queen who once walked her city streets with pride was now bound in chains, her crown stripped, her name spoken only by demons who mocked her pain. Hell was not only flame and iron, it was memory, sharpened into a blade. Each day she relived the moment she had turned from Dream, her heart torn open again and again. In her mind, she heard his voice calling her name, felt his arms around her, remembered the warmth of their closeness. But then came the cold, the judgment, the chains. Love became both solace and wound, her flame enduring even as the darkness pressed tighter around her. The damned around her crumbled into despair, but Nada endured. Her spirit did not break, though her body knew endless torment. In the deepest hours, she would lift her eyes upward, as if through rock and shadow she could still find the faintest glimmer of the stars she once gazed upon from her palace balcony. She whispered to herself that she had chosen rightly, that she had saved her people, spared her world. Yet the ache of longing never left her, the question echoing always, was it worth the price of eternity? And Dream, in his distant realm, carried the weight of what he had done. He buried it beneath duty, beneath the shaping of dreams and nightmares. He told himself that Nada's fate was justice, that her refusal had demanded consequence. Yet even as he sat upon his throne, cold and unbending, her name lingered at the edges of his mind. In the dreams of men, he sometimes caught a glimpse of her face, her voice like a whisper threading through his endless dominion. 10,000 years passed, but for the endless, time was only a breath. For Nada, it was an ocean in which she drowned each day, a tide that never receded. Still she endured, her spirit a flickering flame that hell itself could not extinguish. For in her heart, she carried both love and defiance, two fires that burned together in the darkness. When the world above changed, when empires rose and fell, when mortals lived and died and forgot, Nada remained. A single soul in endless torment, waiting, not for forgiveness, not for mercy, but perhaps for the moment when even pride must bow to love. A chance at release. 10,000 years is longer than nations endure, longer than faiths hold sway, longer than memory clings to names carved in stone. And yet still Nada suffered, her soul chained in the caverns of hell. Demons jeered at her, flames licked her skin, and sorrow pressed upon her shoulders like the weight of the world. And yet she did not break. She remained herself, the queen who had chosen her people over passion, who had defied the endless, even as eternity pressed her into silence. But even endless are not untouched by time. Dream, who had cast her down in wrath, found himself altered by the centuries. His pride, once unyielding, had been tempered by loss, by journeys that tested his power and his heart. And when at last he walked into hell, not as judge but as supplicant, it was not only for duty that he came, for he remembered her still. The walls of hell shook as he arrived, shadows bending, fires dimming before his presence. The damned shrank from his gaze, for even in torment they recognized an endless. And there in the deepest place, bound in flame and sorrow, was Nada. Her eyes lifted, weary yet unbroken, and for the first time in an age, she beheld the man she had once loved. He was unchanged, tall, pale, cloaked in the shadows of eternity. And yet she sensed it immediately. Something in him was different, softened, scarred. For the first time, he looked at her not with pride, not with anger, but with something she had thought lost forever, regret. Nada, he whispered, and her name trembled in the air like a prayer. She closed her eyes, a shiver running through her, for though 10,000 years had passed, the sound of her name upon his lips still stirred something in her chest. Yet when she looked upon him, she did not smile. "Why have you come?" she asked, her voice raw with centuries of sorrow. "To gloat? To remind me of my refusal? Or to condemn me anew?" Dream bowed his head, and the shadows seemed to fold around him. "I have come to free you," he said simply. "At last. I was wrong, Nada. I let my pride speak louder than my heart, and for that I have damned the one I loved most. I cannot undo the years stolen from you, but I can end them now." For a long moment, Nada was silent. The fire hissed around her, chains rattled, demons watched with wide, gleeful eyes. And then she spoke, her voice steady, a queen's voice, even in hell. "You call this love, Morpheus? Love that condemned me? Love that chose wrath over mercy? Do you know what 10,000 years feels like? He faltered, his pale lips parting without answer. For Dream knew eternity, but he had not endured it as she had. He had not suffered flame and chains in silence, stripped of every comfort, every breath of freedom. Still she looked at him, and for the briefest moment, her eyes softened. For beneath the sorrow, beneath the scars, she saw that he had changed, that perhaps even an endless could learn. "Release me," she said at last, her voice low. "Not for love, not for desire, but for justice. Let me walk free, and let the flames of this torment end. What comes after is no longer ours to claim." Dream reached out, and with a gesture, the chains that bound her fell away. The fires dimmed, and Nada stepped forward, no longer prisoner, no longer damned. Yet between them hung the weight of centuries, the fracture too deep to heal. Nightmare in Hell. The flames receded. The chains clattered to the floor. And at last, after 10,000 years of torment, Nada stood free. Yet freedom did not feel like triumph. It felt like a wound, one long kept open, now raw again beneath the cold air of hell. Dream watched her, tall and solemn, the weight of eternity in his eyes. He had spoken words of regret, had given her release, but he could not erase what had been done. Pride had stolen centuries from her. Anger had cost them both the chance at something greater. And though she stood before him once more, unbound, she knew there could be no return to what once was. "Nada," he murmured again, his voice softer than the shifting of sand through an hourglass. But her eyes did not meet his. She gazed instead at the cavern walls, at the shadows that seemed to retreat from her presence. She was no longer the queen who had first looked up at the sky and fallen in love with the dream who walked among stars. She was something different now, older, scarred, unyielding. "What do you expect of me?" she asked, her voice like steel tempered in fire. "To forget? To love you again, as if those centuries did not exist? To offer my heart once more to the man who cast it into flame?" Dream flinched at her words, though he was endless, though nothing should wound him. For there was truth in them sharper than any blade. "I expect nothing," he said slowly, shadows curling at the edges of his form. "Only that you walk free of this place. Only that I give back to you the life I should never have stolen." The silence between them was immense, echoing louder than the screams of the damned. For a fleeting instant, she remembered the first time she had seen him, how the air had shimmered, how her heart had raced, how the very earth seemed to tremble at their union. And in that instant, her chest ached with the ghost of what might have been. But ghosts cannot be grasped. They are only memories, flickering and gone. She stepped past him, her bare feet silent on the stone. He did not stop her, did not reach out. For even if he could bind the world in dreams, he could not bind her heart again. At the edge of hell, where the gates opened onto the vast dark between realms, she turned at last. Her gaze met his, steady and unbroken. "I loved you once," she said, her voice carrying across the chasm of ages. "But love cannot survive chains. It cannot survive eternity burned into the soul. Perhaps in another life, in another time, we could have been more, but not in this one. Dream bowed his head, his dark hair falling like midnight around his face. He wanted to speak, to beg, to promise, but he said nothing. For what words could mend what his silence had already destroyed? And then Nada stepped into the dark, vanishing into the worlds beyond. Her figure dissolved into the endless night, and Dream was left alone in hell, his regret heavier than any chain he had cast upon her. In the end, their love did not burn out. It endured as memory, as longing, as an unfinished flame that no time, no realm, not even the endless themselves could extinguish. A love not ended, but forever suspended, flickering in the dream of what might have been. you.